Welcome to Career Coffee Chat Live. I am your host today and every day. My name is Erin Urban or Coachy Urban. I'm thrilled to have you tune in to the show, whether you're watching live or you're listening to the replay or watching the replay or listening to the podcast. Now, today we're talking about a very timely topic, burnout. Most importantly, shifting from burnout back to balanced. I don't know about you, but right now I know that most of the people I talk to are feeling a little exhausted, overworked, tired. In fact, on Monday of this week, I launched a poll that asked people, hey, you're maybe feeling disengaged with work or life. What do you think the cause might be? Now, overwhelmingly, people responded, hey, I'm feeling burnout, exhausted, and overworked. Well, our awesome guest today is going to talk about how to shift from that feeling into a more balanced, peaceful, and productive way of being. And what's the difference between burnout? Because we use burnout a lot. So, what is burnout and what isn't burnout? So, as you tune into the show, whether you're watching now or whether you're watching replay later, please say hi. Don't be shy. Come on in, have a seat, pull up a chair. We want to talk to you. We want to hear what your questions are and your concerns. If you think you might be experiencing burnout or not quite sure what it might be, or someone in your family or friend or coworker, we want to hear your thoughts. What's going on in your life? Because this allows us, my friends, to help you. So if you've never seen my smiling face before, my name is Coachy Urban or Erin Urban. You can learn out more about me and what I do and how I help people thrive in their zone of genius at coachyurban.com. And if you've never seen the Career Coffee Chat live show or live stream and podcast, feel free to check us out on my YouTube channel. Of course, here on LinkedIn, we're on YouTube and Twitter, all live simultaneously, and thrilled to and welcome you to the show. So no matter where you are when you're tuning in, please say hi. We want to welcome you to the show. Now, if you're not sure whether you're experiencing stress or burnout, definitely want you to tune in and share this with anybody you feel might be struggling with this so that they can learn some stress freeing strategies to free them from burnout with our expert burnout coach and burnout recovery coach. Because right now stress seems to be this new normal, it doesn't have to be that way, okay, to be fair. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, anxious, tired, or concerned for your health, this is what we're talking about today, and how to shift from that feeling back to a balanced, more centered feeling, even if you are super busy, which we'll be talking more about that today as well. Now, my wonderful guest, Michelle Connery, she has a wealth of certifications. She is also has a background in accounting. And what she does, she's a burnout recovery coach and founder of Michelle Connery Coaching. What she does is helps ambitious professionals reignite their flame and go from burnt out to balanced. So please join me in welcoming our wonderful guest, Michelle, to the show. It's so glad to have you here today.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me, Erin.
Yeah, great to see David. And David says, he said, uncertainty causes a lot of stress and contributes, he believes, to my feelings of burnout.
That's
David, I
yeah,
think you're onto something for sure. Absolutely. We'll be talking about that
absolutely.
today, David. So great to see you. Glad to have you on the show today. So, Michelle, I'm curious, and curious minds want to know what got you. I mean, you were a thriving accountant, and then
Yeah.
you're doing burnout recovery coach. Now, we know accounting's tough.
Yeah, I know. It sounds like, one extreme to the other, right? So you're
Yeah.
right. For over 20 years, I was a corporate accountant. I climbed the ladder. I was a workaholic. And yeah, I know. I
Nobody
can
here
admit it
is
now.
tuning in now or later. Can you remotely relate to that? I don't know what you're talking about, this workaholic thing. I mean, we don't
Yeah.
do that in the US for
No, we don't
sure.
do that, right? Right. Yeah. So as I was climbing the corporate ladder, I just kept putting in more and more time. And I just, at some point, my only focus became my career and my job,
Wow, yeah.
right? And I
Mhm,
started to neglect my health, my relationships,
mhm,
etc. And it took a health scare in 2018 to start me realizing I needed to do something different. And
mhm.
then the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
And it's those two things that really started opening up my eyes to the fact that it was more than just stress that I was dealing with, because I thought, oh, it's just the stress of the job. It's just the way it is.
Mhm.
Accounting's stressful. We have to work all these long hours. It's what I got myself into. I just need to learn to deal with it.
Justification. Yeah.
And when the pandemic hit is when I finally admitted that I was burnt out. So it took 2 years from a health scare to pandemic for me to actually recognize or realize that it was burnout. And I just had nothing left to give at that point. March 2020, I was just like, I'd like to say in the pit of despair, because it just felt so hopeless. I was so overwhelmed. My productivity was an all-time low. And for somebody who's a perfectionist and a high achiever, I just felt like I was no good. I couldn't do anything right.
Right. A lot of negative self-talk.
A lot of negative self-talk. And I ended up taking off almost a month and working with my therapist at the time. She's between her and my GP really realized that it was burnout. And through that process, started to realize that, you know what, I don't want to continue to live like this. Right. And that is when I started to get some clarity and really tap into what's important to me. What do I want to do? How do I want to live my life? And that's when I started to make some real changes. And in August 2020, I left my job. Over 20 years, was almost 25. Different companies over that 25 years, but I was a director of finance at the time. So I left my 6-figure job, packed up, and moved across the country to be closer to my family, because most of my family had moved from Ontario to Newfoundland in Canada. And I realized,
the world.
And I realized I didn't want to be living alone in this career that I didn't really love. And
Michelle, this resonates with me, because obviously what I do is I'm helping people find their happiness, right? Their gifts to the world, and being able to leverage that zone of genius, particularly in their careers, but holistically in their lives. So many people I talk to and that come to me, they're in this place professionally, and they're miserable. And worst of all, they don't have support that they need either. So that's a lot, because they feel like they're alone, and they don't really have that network to lean on to. Because I feel like, maybe if people had that community, that there's a couple friends or a pal or what have you, that they could talk to, even if it's a work colleague. And now thanks to remote work, that's a little challenging sometimes.
A little harder, but it can be done. It can be done.
A little bit. So, I feel like if they had someone to talk to, then maybe it wouldn't have gone on for so long.
Exactly.
Now, and from time to time, I do run across someone who comes to me. He's like, oh, I really want to find my zone of genius so I can thrive in the workplace, because I feel, I'm just miserable and unhappy. And we find out that, no, you're miserable and unhappy. You're also burned out. And I can't help them until they get to a point where their brain is functioning at a more, I would say, productive and healthy manner. Because when you're in deep burnout, and I know because I've been there, it's not a fun place to be.
Oh, no, it's not.
Literally can't hardly function. So,
that is so true. That is so true. And that was like me. I mean, I kind of had ideas of what I wanted to do before the burnout got so bad, because I'd already started doing nutrition certification and things like that, because I had always been interested in that. But it wasn't until I finally left the role and moved out here, and I didn't have a job to go into for the first time in 25 years. Like, talk about scary. But at the same time, I felt good, because I knew I needed that break. And I needed that reflection time. And while I'd been, slowly recovering while I was still working, knowing there was an end in sight helped me to be able to, get through those months until I could leave. But I actually, the downtime I needed was more than I ever thought I would, right? As a type A, I thought, 2 weeks in quarantine.
Oh, yeah. Kind of like when we first went into the pandemic, like some of us, like me, was like, oh, we'll be done in June. It's like that, avian flu or whatever, or swine flu, whatever came by in the last couple of years. I'll be done June. No, we weren't.
No.
Like,
No. So it actually took me several months to start feeling better, because I was so exhausted, and it's mentally and physically, right? It's both. And just disconnected and feeling so cynical, like nothing would ever change. Now, for me, the act of moving helped me start seeing that things could change. And then, like I said, moving out and being closer to my family is really what helped me to start to recover.
That hope back.
Yeah, because I
there's
had
a
people to
next, and
support.
that next is positive.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
a big part of it too. No, we'll talk more about this in a minute.
Yeah.
But I'd love to just really quickly, if you don't mind, and let me know, any of you either watching now or later, if some of this resonates with you, because there's a difference. A lot of us throw around the word burnout, and sometimes we are in the burnout that you mentioned, which is true burnout, which is you're just absolutely what I call obliterated, or as when I was in England, I had to just finished extraordinarily difficult bike ride across the English countryside, which, if you're not familiar with that countryside, can be this way and that way, all up and all down. So I came into the B&B, and the man looks at me and goes, "My dear, you are just shattered." And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty accurate. I'm just shattered. So you're feeling just shattered.
Yeah.
That's a little different than just needing a vacation. So Michelle, share with us, what is burnout and what isn't burnout?
Yeah, so sometimes people get confused between stress and burnout, because stress does lead to burnout, right? So chronic stress does lead to burnout. So I always like to say you can be stressed and not be burnt out, but you can't be burnt out without stress. So stress is usually a feeling of you have too much on your plate, a lot of things going on. You might find your mind racing, right? You might feel edgy or amped up. And there's good stress and there's bad stress, right? Bad stress is chronic stress that you don't deal with. Good stress, I like to say, is that type, you're getting up to make a big presentation, you get a little bit of kick of energy and you got that focus. And then as soon as the presentation's done, you can relax. So that's stress, right? You can be worried, you can be anxious, but when the thing that's causing you stress is gone, your body regulates yourself back down to calm, and your nervous system starts to, take over.
Right. Yeah.
Right. That's not, but chronic stress is when you get stuck into flight or fight, and that can lead into burnout because your body can't handle being in that state all the time. So when you're in burnout, and when you're in the, like you said, the habitual burnout, which is the final phase of burnout, where you literally have nothing left to give, what I say is it's a feeling of not having enough of anything, not enough energy, physically, mentally, emotionally. The idea of getting out of bed in the morning, like brushing your teeth, the simplest tasks can feel just so overwhelming. Because I remember just having days where I'm like, oh, I don't want to go to work. Like, I can't get out of bed to go to work today. I don't even want to get up and have my shower, wash my hair, and brush my teeth. I didn't feel like I had enough energy to do those basic things of life. Anything that I used to enjoy no longer held any joy.
Right.
None at all. I had constant brain fog. I was having trouble remembering things that I would normally remember, like people's birthdays. I was always the person that remembered everybody's birthday. And I was forgetting those things. And it was so frustrating, because I'd be at work, I'd be talking to somebody, and my thoughts would just disappear. And I'd be like, then panicking, because like, what was I going to say? And, your creativity decreases, your productivity decreases, because you just don't feel like doing anything. You're making more mistakes.
Basically, that's a literal shell of a person.
That is a great analogy. And you're just so cynical, like nothing is ever going to get any better. For me, I found out I was lashing out a lot more because I'm so super tired, right? So things that normally wouldn't annoy me, I was quick to anger, and I would lash out. I'd lash out at my staff, and that was never me, right? And then I would go from lashing out to bursting out in tears. So those were my emotions. There was no happy, positive joy, no joy. It was just all dark and very scary, and a lot of self-doubt. That inner critic of mine was screaming, over the years. I always pushed myself because I never thought I was good enough. And then I hit burnout, and the inner critic's like, see, told you weren't good enough. Now everybody's going to know. And that was just a horrifying feeling.
Yeah, that's awful.
To sit there and think, oh my God, the jig's up. I'm going to get fired. I'm going to get this, that, the other thing, right? So it was just, and then you just keep spiraling.
You keep spiraling. It's what I call the SHIT cycle. but it's just the spiral. You're out of control.
You're out of control.
You're in
Yeah.
this spin cycle, and you just
Yeah.
can't seem to
Yeah.
grasp.
Yeah. And
And
it,
so
and it was
where do
scary
you
because, like
stop?
you said, especially if you don't know what it is,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of shame around it too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because as somebody who was, you're in those successful roles, you've worked
Mm-hmm.
so hard to get there. You're seen as a high achiever, a high
Mm-hmm.
performer, and then all of a sudden you're not performing.
Right.
And but you also can't speak about it because you're ashamed. You're like, if I
Mhm.
admit to
Right.
this, people are going to
Mhm.
think less of me
Mhm.
and things are going to get worse.
Yeah.
So
So
then
I'd love to
that,
hear from anybody. You're
yeah,
tuning in now or later. I know we're getting, it seems like a pretty dark subject, but it's important to
it is.
understand the difference
It is.
between just, superficial, fleeting stress and
Yeah.
something that may be more systematic.
Yeah.
Because a lot of us will tend to go into this cycle because we like to stay busy. We have
Mm-hmm.
this high achieving, we set high bar for ourselves, and we want to continue to, well, let's face it, we're a grit and hustle culture primarily in the US.
Yeah.
So because we are that, we'll tend to keep pushing ourselves down this path, thinking, okay, well, it's just a season. It'll change, it's just temporary, but doesn't.
That's correct. Yeah.
Then we don't speak up. Now, I would have to say, after 3 years of dealing with constant uncertainty, constant change, and just everything at once,
Mm-hmm.
more people are speaking up, and a lot more people also are checking out.
Yeah.
They're disengaged, and we hear this term called quiet quitting, which I roll my eyes at because, first of all, it's not quitting. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a systematic problem that was existing pre-pandemic. We had a wild amount of employee disengagement already before the
Yeah.
pandemic, and
Yeah.
then
Now
then
you just
we
have
went
one
into
more.
overwork syndrome. So we had all the layoffs, and so people who did have jobs, and they worked even more hours. And then we had survivor's guilt because, well,
Yeah.
and then we had, oh well, gosh, we have to make up. Then 2021 was makeup year. Well, let's
Mm-hmm.
make up for everything we didn't do in 2020. So then we're totally stressed out and doing way more than we should.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah. We're
unsustainable.
not stopping to take a breath to admit that,
No.
it's okay for us to be feeling overwhelmed right now. It's
Yeah,
totally okay. There's just been
yeah,
too
it
much
is
going on.
okay to not be okay.
Exactly. It is okay to not be okay. And I think that was one of the other things for me too, is I had always um, suffered from anxiety, but when I was
Mhm.
younger, I didn't know what that was. It was one of those things that, again, until 2018 is when I really started to realize that
Mhm.
I do have anxiety, but it wasn't until 2020 that I actually, had that on top of my burnout. So it was even
Right.
worse. So yeah, for me, it was a wild ride, and it took some time, but there is life after burnout. So
Yeah.
I like to give
There is.
people that hope, and like you said, like that shame that you're experiencing, I'm so glad that so many more people are speaking up about it now,
Mhm.
because that shame can't hide in the light. And the more we normalize it, whether we're talking about mental illness or burnout, the better um, it is, and the less shame that there will be around it, and the more that we can help each other move forward and move through it and recover. So
Yeah,
that's why I'm so
absolutely.
happy to be here and
I
talking
know,
about
and
it
we're
today.
so happy to have you. And I think it's important for people to know the difference between, temporary fleeting stress and burnout. Now,
Mhm,
Michelle, obviously what you discovered or experienced was the deepest
mhm,
burnout a person
mhm.
can experience before final burnout. And when I call final burnout, actually you expire as a person. So you
Yeah,
leave this plane
yeah.
of existence. And yes, it can happen.
Mhm,
But the important thing for someone to know is where they are. And I think there is a plus side to everything that we've been through. It's that people are they feel more capable now more than ever to say something,
mhm.
to reach out for help, to say,
Yeah.
okay, I need to talk to someone. I need to, maybe talk to a therapist. I need to share. Maybe I need to take a vacation and have that deep reflection. Okay, I'm taking a vacation. If I'm not having fun, if I'm not enjoying myself, and I still feel miserable, yeah, we
Mhm.
have burnout.
Yeah,
It's not
exactly.
just a vacation curable thing.
No, no, it's
And
not.
if you're constantly anxious and you're constantly stressed, even when you are not around work, when you've taken that time, I encourage everybody to take the time, take a long weekend, a week off, 2 weeks if you can. And if that doesn't
Doesn't
help,
help. Yeah,
then yeah, you
then it's
definitely
more.
have
Yeah,
burnout. Yeah, for
definitely,
sure.
because and you hit the nail right on the head, like, vacations will not cure burnout.
No, of course.
Vacations will help with your stress, but if you go like, if you're already, like, worried about what's gonna happen the day you walk back into the office and you're
Mhm.
still exhausted and you're still overwhelmed and all of that, it's burnout. It's more. You might not be in habitual burnout, you could be in the burnout phase, or you could be, you could be working your way through, but the
Mhm.
sooner you realize it, the sooner you can start climbing back out.
Exactly. And you can start to take intentional steps
Mhm,
towards healing. And
mhm.
one of the questions I get is, do I have to totally unplug in order to heal from burnout? Well, that depends.
Yeah.
So that's my consultant answer. That depends. It depends on, how far down the burnout trail you
Yeah.
are. If you haven't reached the what I call the pit of deep burnout, then maybe not. But if you have,
Mhm.
yes, you need to just
Yeah.
completely
Yeah.
unplug
Yeah.
because it's necessary. It's not really optional. Well, you still work in that state?
I
Yeah.
was trying, but I
Oh,
was not at my best. You can ask anybody I worked with. I that was
no.
yeah.
No. I mean, you really need time to heal. So
Mhm,
let's just say, someone realizes, oh, okay, I'm flirting with burnout. I'm in a higher level.
mhm.
First of all, what would you say to that person, Michelle?
Yeah, so like you said, it depends on where they're at and what's actually causing their burnout, right?
Mhm.
So I know the World Health Organization has said that burnout is just their definition, it's work, right? And work related. But there are other
Mm,
factors that contribute to burnout. So
right.
thinking that it's just your job causing the burnout is one of the big mistakes that people made, and I had done that before my last role. I had went from one company to another, and I hadn't recognized that I was already in the earlier stages of burnout. And then I got into an environment that was more toxic than what I was in, and it just escalated it, right?
Right,
And I
right.
hadn't done any of the self work that I needed to do to recover. So what I say is, like, before you figure out, do I need to disconnect? Do I need to leave my job? Do I need to take time off? It's figuring out where you, like you said, where you are in that stage
Mhm.
of burnout, and what are some of the underlying causes of your burnout? Are there, because there's internal causes such as, like, are you a people pleaser? Are you a perfectionist? You tend
That's a
to
big
be
one.
more prone to burnout.
People who are high achievers are always
Mhm.
more prone to being more stressed out, more anxiety issues,
Yeah.
and burnout.
Yep.
And I coach primarily all high achievers. I'm
Yep.
very familiar with
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. People who are overgiving, people who can't set boundaries or have difficulty setting boundaries,
Difficult saying no. Yeah.
not being able to say no. If you had a trauma or bullying in your past, those are all things, you have difficulty delegating. So maybe your manager who thinks you have to do everything.
Mm,
That's going to cause some problems. And the big one for high achievers, not being willing to ask for help when they need it.
that's a big one. Yep.
That's a big one, right? So those are all internal factors that can lead to burnout. And then
Mhm.
there's, external. It can be your workload, it can be the environment, lack of autonomy. Maybe your values are not matched with your workplace
Right. Right.
or
Yep.
your family or your friends. That can
Mhm.
also cause stress, cultural pressures, any racism,
Mhm.
discrimination, being a
Mhm.
caregiver, all of those things can cause burnout, right? Because
Even
it's
working
chronic.
around people who are a different work style than you.
Yeah.
So let's just say you on the spectrum, you're an S dominant and you're working primarily D dominance. So
Mhm.
that those Ds are high drivers, they're
Mhm.
achievers or what next kind of people. They don't have time or that fluffy
Yeah.
people nonsense,
Yeah.
they're not here at work to make friends. And that's just not you. Like that's the opposite of who you are. And
Yeah.
I have coached people who are experiencing like what I call soft burnout. It's a level of burnout that's more quickly recoverable, but they are burned out because they're working around people that are just toxic to them.
Yeah.
So burnout can come in different forms and it can be just simply personal. Maybe work is great, but hey, you were thrown into your partner's life and you into, the other way around, and you just didn't really mesh being around each other 100%
Mhm.
of the time since
Mhm.
2020, right?
Yeah.
So there is that going on.
Yeah, there's a
And
lot of that. And
yeah.
and like you said, and to your point, like for the work environment that I was in, yeah, there was a lot of the work styles of the people above me
Mhm.
didn't mesh with me, and that was causing a lot
Yeah,
of internal
tension.
conflict. And
Mhm.
for most of my career, I always felt like I was the square peg in the round hole, because I tended to lead with compassion and empathy, and I was always told that that was a weakness and I should be tougher and stronger and
Mm.
blah blah blah
Mhm.
blah blah. So I always had those mismatched values. So while some people might thrive in that type of environment, other people won't, right? So you got
Mhm.
to understand that, and it doesn't mean that you can't thrive. Maybe it's just the wrong environment.
Mhm.
So
Now, Suresh, I can tell that you're from a culture who believes that stress can only be controlled through breathing exercises. Stress can actually be controlled by some other things. I know you mentioned before that the mind cannot be controlled in the level of the mind itself, and in fact, it can be. And I would be happy to share some tactics around what that looks like from a neuroscience perspective that's been researched and proven to work. Now, breathing, and Suresh mentioned panorama. Pranayama, sorry, and some other things I probably will not butcher because I don't speak. I, I have my grandfather's gift of mispronouncing everything,
me
so I
too.
won't. I won't. But you're welcome to read it here on the screen. Some other breathing type exercises that help with stress, and that
Mhm.
is certainly a part of controlling
Definitely.
stress. So I think this is maybe a good moment to maybe talk about what we can do. So we know we're stressed, or we know we're somewhere on the scale.
Yeah.
Now, deep burnout, we'll talk more about here in a moment, but we know we're somewhere in the scale of stress.
Yeah.
We're flirting with burnout, perhaps. Maybe we're even in the early stages of burnout. Of course, breathing will help, but there's more we can do. What does that look
Mhm.
like, Michelle?
Yeah, so yeah, definitely breathing is great, and it sounds silly for some. "Oh, I breathe all the time." Well, no, are you really breathing? Are you
Right.
holding on to
Are
it?
you
So
breathing
that
in a way that's nourishing to the body?
exactly. So the
Mhm.
deep breathing techniques exactly that Suresh is mentioning are amazing and can help regulate your nervous systems. Um, but yeah, it's like you said, self-care. I don't want to just use it. It's not just
It's not just
mani-pedi.
bubble baths, it's not
It's
just
not
going for a long
mani-pedis,
walk.
right?
Yeah.
Self-care is taking
Yeah.
care of the
Mhm.
brain, and it's about being able to get rest and not just sleep and rest. I like to separate them because rest is any type of down activity that's going to help you get away from that stress, or manage that stress and deal with
Mhm.
the stress in your body. So it can be something you enjoy, it could be exercise, it could be meditation, it could be playing with your kids, having a spontaneous dance party. For me personally, I love baking,
Mhm.
especially with my niece and nephew. They're twins. They're now, well, they'll be 7 in January. They're growing up too quickly. Um, but it's fine. I think a lot of times when we're type A personalities and we're high achievers, we're so focused on our career goals that we
Mhm.
forget that life is also about doing things we really enjoy and finding
Mhm.
joy in those moments and actually being in those moments. We're always either thinking about the future or ruminating about what I could have done
Absolutely.
better.
I
And
was
we're
just
not
talking about that
really
today.
in the
We're not
moment
here. Yeah.
enjoying what it is we're doing. So either we're with our kids or we're with our family, but we're still on our phone checking our work emails.
Mhm.
So it's about learning to have that balance between doing activities that are going to replenish your mind and your soul.
Mhm.
And for
Yeah.
everybody, it's different things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Diego mentioned, he said the art of living for me is getting to take a walk or a jog in the
Mhm.
forest and getting, seeing new places and meeting new people.
I love
Absolutely, there
that.
you go. So
Yeah.
knowing what nourishes you is really, really important. And for some people, they really haven't explored that. Like, what
No,
nourishes me, and why? Why haven't we explored it that much? Well, because we have a busyness culture.
we
We're living in
do.
this what next,
Yeah.
syndrome. We have what next syndrome, and we're always
Yeah.
what nexting ourselves, and we're not ever pausing.
Yeah.
Now, I think one of the benefits of 2020 is what I call the great reflection. A lot of people did. They actually, for maybe the first time in their life, had a moment to pause, whether they wanted
Yeah.
or not. And they started finding maybe a new priority for themselves, or maybe a new pathway or new way of being. So that's
Mhm.
wonderful that that's starting to happen. But that didn't happen for everybody.
No,
Right.
no,
No.
no. Some people are still just too overwhelmed and can't even go
Mhm.
there. And I know for myself, if you had asked me pre-2020 what I did for fun, I wouldn't have had an answer for you because my
Mhm.
life was my work. And I'm like, fun, what's fun? Right? Or what do you do to relax?
Mhm.
I always joke that relax was not a part of my vocabulary. So nobody is perfect. Yeah, that's right. Nobody is perfect. And that is something I had to learn as well. As a recovering perfectionist, I always was striving to do and be the best. And you can't be. But for me, it was really reconnecting with what brings me joy and what lit me
Mhm.
up, because before that, I couldn't have told you. I even actually had to start asking my parents, what did I do as a kid that, gave me joy, that I thought was fun? Like, because
Right.
I couldn't remember. That was
Sure.
the
Yeah.
scary part. I couldn't remember. And being
Mhm.
around my niece and nephew at the time when I moved out here, they were about 4.5. That really helped me connect with joy, because spending some
Mhm.
time with 4.5, 5-year olds and seeing how they play and reconnecting to play really helped me.
Reconnecting to play, absolutely, and
Mhm.
that's you make a really brilliant point, because I feel like particularly I would have to say most in the EU and the US, and I just came back from the EU a couple of weeks ago, and it's the same thing there. We have this. Well, we take adulting too seriously, shall we say? We don't. We grow up and we become this stoic, not
Mhm.
very fun person. I mean, they're just
Mhm.
we take adulting too far and we forget that there's a lot of joy in just being more free and
Yeah.
playing and having fun in life and not being so serious.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just let go of that. It's
Yeah.
okay, and I think one of the reasons why we do latch on to this because we've been programmed such from very early childhood to particularly in the U.S. to set ourselves in this path of
Mhm.
acting a certain way,
Mhm.
exhibiting certain behaviors. We got to do this, and we're going to go to college, and we're going to get a degree, and then we go into the working world, and then we move
Yeah.
up the ladder because that's what
Yeah.
you do, and then
Yeah.
you find a partner, and you have kids, and you act a certain way, and it's just mostly BS, to be honest.
It
Um,
is. It
yeah,
is.
absolutely.
And like you said, nowhere in there is fun or joy.
No, yeah,
Right?
absolutely not.
Nowhere, nowhere. You're not taught to
Mhm.
have that. After you're a kid, you're not allowed to have that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's like riding a bike, for example, as a
Mhm.
cyclist. Some who are unaware that riding a bike is something adults do for fun and joy and exercise, are like,
Yeah.
what do you do that for? That's something kids do. And they're like,
Yeah.
no. I mean, it's similar to
Yeah.
that. And Linda,
Mhm.
it's great to see you. Said this chat is perfect timing. So I'm
Yay.
glad to see you tuning on. So yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting, I want to say, sabotaging syndrome that we have. We
Me
just
too.
we become this state of being that's
Yeah.
very fixed and rigid and doesn't have
Yeah.
space for fun, joy, peace.
Yeah.
We look down and frown upon people who take pauses. I
Mhm.
was just talking to a gentleman today, in fact, talking about the 4 Hour Work Week. We've probably heard of that book, and it was written the 4 Hour Work Week. I've read the book, and I'm a firm believer in that concept because research has proven that in an 8 hour day, you only do 4 hours of productive work.
Yeah.
So are we working at an 8 hour day? I'm a big proponent to taking power pauses, which is 5 to 10 breaks a day. Sorry, five to five breaks a day, 5 to 10 minutes each.
Yeah.
Completely unplugging, no scrolling through social media,
I
no looking
love
at funny
that.
cat
Yeah.
videos, don't,
Yeah.
try to read an email, try to task yourself
Yeah.
out. Get off that part of the brain. It needs time to refresh.
It
But
does.
yeah,
And process, right? Because
yeah.
what we're not realizing is we're not
Mhm.
giving ourselves time to process and think.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not going to be as productive if we're just constantly in that, like you said, busy mode, the go, 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 because the brain needs that time to pause. It needs downtime, reflection time. It needs all of that to be healthy. And you're more productive when you put that stuff into your workload than if you don't.
Absolutely.
And that's the funny part. Like most of us, and me, I did that for over 20 years. I didn't do
just
that.
push, 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 push.
Exactly.
No, that's actually
until my body said, you can't push anymore. You keep pushing, you won't be here. Right? Like that's the reality. And I like to, it's harsh, but the one thing that I like to tell my clients is like, I don't want you to kill yourself for your job. Right? Because too many of us, that's the culture, is that we think, okay, when I retire, then I can get back to having fun.
But that's not true, because by that point, it's become systemic. It's become a belief system, habitual. The limbic brain is addicted to it. And you're addicted to constant busyness. And that is your sense of self. So you don't have a sense of being, identity outside of work.
Exactly.
And that's what we're seeing. Research has proven that the risk of dying, expiring between ages of 60 and 70 or 70, 75 are like 75% higher. So in that first 5 years after retirement, or 75% increased risk of passing away. That's insane. And why?
Because you stopped and your body doesn't know what to do anymore. It's like, okay, I can finally rest.
So let's look at the now. So what are we experiencing now? Because what I'm hearing, and tune in if you feel the same way, because I've heard it a lot. I've heard people are just tired, like they don't have the energy. We're seeing a reduction in conferences in person and virtual. Just seeing people just backing off. We heard about quiet quitting, which I think is probably mislabeled. We have all this disengagement. What is going on? And it's not just in the workplace. It's also in our personal lives. What is going on and why? Well, let's look over the last almost 3 years. We've been in this pandemic mode. We have what's called disaster fatigue.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not even your work. Maybe it's not even your personal life. Let's just look at me, for example. I love what I do. I get to help people find happiness and thrive. I mean, what's not exciting about that? You love what you do. You get to do the same thing. And I have a great home life. I love where I'm at. I mean, everything is wonderful. Yet still, sometimes I'm just like, oh.
I know. Yeah.
Why? Well, why do we feel like this? Disaster fatigue. We've been in this state of uncertainty for almost 3 years. We all have this steady state, elevated threat level in our limbic brain. Our limbic brain's looking for threats. So that's elevating that, getting us into closer to that fight or flight constantly, in that fight or flight mode constantly. And there's this thing called emotional contagion. So what emotional contagion literally is, and it's more poignant for those people who identify with being more empathetic with others, right? They really get to read others a little bit deeper. Is literally picking up other people's emotions. So you're feeling the people around you are just, so then you feel, and then it's just really fascinating. Maybe it's not, you're confused. Oh, I like my job. I enjoy what I do. And there's nothing wrong in the home life. In fact, it's fantastic. I'm working from home, or I have a good balance or whatever. And I feel physically fit. I don't know why. I'm just, but.
Yeah. 100% agree. I mean, I always identified as being more empathetic than some others that I worked with. And I was always feeling my employees' levels of stress and then mine, and the fact that I couldn't do anything to help them. Right.
And that
so then it's ratcheted up my stress level.
Yeah, exactly. So what can we do right now? I mean, I think holistically, as a society, we have this elevated level of threat, this elevated level of stress, and just knowing that, number one, our brains and bodies are not designed to handle this. We're designed for short-term stress, run away from a saber-toothed tiger or fight it, one of the two. And because we're in that state constantly, it does a couple of things physically. One, it elevates our blood sugar levels. So pandemic pounds, you wonder where that came from, even though you did more working out or what have you. And it also encourages us to not necessarily be as balanced emotionally. And our cognitive function. When we're in that level of fight or flight, well, cognitive is not like getting the energy.
That's not where the body's trying to get you out of danger, right? Yeah. That when you're in fight or flight, that's all it's done.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to like finding those things that you can disconnect from. Like, honestly, I do not watch the news anymore.
Yep.
I stopped watching the news in 2018. And then a couple of weeks ago, I started watching it again because Hurricane Fiona was coming our way. So I was watching it for updates. But even then, I could start feeling my anxiety,
the stress and
and
anxiety.
the stress. And I had to turn it off. I'm like, okay, I've got the updates on my phone. I'll know if we have to evacuate.
Right.
Like, we're ready. That's all I can do. Like, I can't do anything more. And constantly watching this, and then even watching the images after the fact, right? I could just, even though it's on screen, I could feel the people, you
feel the
anxiety
for the people who went through it.
I had to turn it off. I had to, for my emotional health and well-being, I had to turn it off. I had to disconnect myself from it. And like you said, turning off those cell phones. Stop the scroll. That's one of the worst things, we're scrolling on those and then going immediately to bed, right? We're scrolling on them all day. So
and we're not giving our brain a break. We're in between meetings, we're looking at our phone. When we're waiting for a coffee at Starbucks, we're looking at our phone. How many people, when you're waiting, what is the first thing? I would love to hear in the chat, whether it be now or later, you're watching the replay or now, what is that thing you go to when you're waiting?
Yeah.
What is it? I'd love to hear from you. Do you just stand there and talk to people? I want to know. Probably not. It's
probably not. I mean, gone are the days when we used to bring a book to the waiting room, right, at the doctor's office, or or just sit there in quiet contemplation. What's that? I'm going to get bored.
This
actually let yourself get bored. That might be a good idea.
Yeah. Boredom's actually a really good idea. So it allows your brain to refresh its glycogen stores, which allows the brain to not only be able to become more, basically makes you smarter. Okay. It increases your cognitive function. So it increases your brain's ability to think and leverage the tools at your disposal. So having those pauses are actually critical for you to be smart. And if you continually use this thing right here,
we're actually lowering our IQs.
You're actually lowering your IQ. So research has shown it's very, very, very interesting. So let's just say you've got your phone in front of you and you're doing work and you're constantly flipping between doing work and looking at the phone and doing work, working back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. We know that we can only do one thing at a time.
Yeah.
We are a processor, just like a computer, can do one thing at a time. Now, the faster the processor is, the faster it can switch between tasks. But what happens when that? So if you have a computer, what happens? It heats up. I'm not saying our brains heat up. But what does happen? It starts to fatigue.
Yeah.
And if done for long periods of time, so prolonged periods of time, in months and years, like this mode, this habit, it can actually permanently reduce your IQ. So, if you take nothing else away from our chat today, stop multitasking your brain. Allow yourself to be bored. Intentionally put pauses in your day and understand what are my inputs.
Yeah. What am I putting in? Right? It's not just like you said, it's a holistic view. I take a holistic view to burnout recovery. So, understanding what's caused the person's burnout is usually the first step, but then looking at their values and their belief systems, right? And really starting to challenge those and challenge the things that they're choosing to spend their time on. And I use the word choose because we don't have to do anything. Everything is a choice. And so really looking at those and looking at things that we can give up. And then we focus on looking at nutrition and sleep and what stress management techniques they have and movement. And I like to say movement instead of exercise because you don't have to go and spend 3 hours in the gym every week. It's about, like you said, taking small movement breaks throughout the day. And if you get up once an hour and walk around your house for 5 minutes or stand up and do some stretching, you're actually going to get more movement in, and it's more beneficial than if you go to the gym.
And another thing really interesting about movement too is, let's just say your mindset, it maybe not be in a positive place. And you want to break that cycle. You're like, oh gosh, I'm thinking glass half empty, or, I'm being very cynical and I want to break that. Actually, physically changing your position, getting up and moving helps your brain shift gears.
Yeah.
Because you stay fixed in the same position, you're trying banging away and you're, well, until you break that physically and mentally, make the decision, okay,
Yeah.
I'm not going to complain about this person or whatever's going on anymore. I'm going to choose a different way of seeing. I'm going to get up, I'm going to go outside, I'm going to walk around my yard, I'm going to walk the
Yeah.
dog, wash the
Whatever.
dishes,
Yeah.
whatever. And then I'll think about something I'm grateful for.
Yeah.
That is the perfect way to do what I call a pattern interrupt.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
movement and then the intentional thought. So even if
Mm-hmm.
you are in like stressed out, overwhelmed, and burnout, and you're struggling to figure out, okay, I know I need to be in a better place. I know I need to do something different. I'm just so overwhelmed. I don't know what to start on. Just do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Here's the thing.
Doesn't have to be a big step. It's
I know
everybody thinks it has to be a
big.
big grand gesture, and I'm a proponent of small 1% actions that are going to take you the distance.
Absolutely. I mean, I have some really wonderful people that love like something called the miracle morning. You do something different for every 5 minutes. You know, you do this and you do that for 5 minutes. I was like, I'm already stressed out. I haven't had breakfast yet. I mean, you know, let's just focus on simplifying, because here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen, my friends tuning in from around the world, wherever you are, whether you're watching now or later. We, right now, in the 21st century, these researchers are extrapolating that we are experiencing 20,000 years of advancement and change in 100 years. 20,000 years. Our brains and bodies literally are not built to handle it. Yes, humans evolve. We don't evolve that fast.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like drinking through a fire hose.
Yeah.
What can we remove from our complexity? And it's so interesting. We spend the first, our childhood, and after childhood, we start spending the first half of our lives making our lives more complex, and the latter half simplify.
Yeah.
What can you simplify now?
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that. And that's actually, I'm reading a new book. It's all about that, right? Essentialism or something. Greg McEwen. It's all about that. It's like, we can't do everything well.
Oh.
So, and he even talks about in the book about having that time for reflection and looking at all the options and really picking the ones that are going to light you up and that you can go all in on and do well. You can't do everything well, right? So it's like the word priority used to mean one, and now somehow we've made it meant we got top 20 priorities to do this year. Well, really? No, you don't.
No.
Yeah. This is right, and that's also what's causing burnout.
Things on it, and that's it.
Yeah, right. It's like we're trying to do too much, and because we've been told we can do everything, but that's not really the case, and that's not balance.
We feel like we can because we try to keep up. I remember when Lotus Notes and email came out. I know I'm dating myself.
Oh, I remember Lotus Notes.
I'm dating myself. And when that came out, I was like, oh, this will never take off. Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
But from that moment, from pagers and then email, and then it just started compounding. And it's just like more. We have these, which the world is our fingertips, and we're getting, notifications. How many pings do you get a day? I'd love for you to count it. So my husband gets like 200. I'm like, stop that. So it's just crazy. Can you turn off your notifications? Can you put an app on to minimize your screen time? Can you not listen to that podcast if it makes you miserable? Observe, like, how do you feel before and after you watch the news? If it's
unfollow people.
Unfollow people, yes.
Unfollow people. You don't have to follow people that are pissing you off. Hit the unfollow.
Right. Block them. You don't have to be on Facebook. I'm actually.
You don't have. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Stop scrolling on TikTok. Right. There's too much crap on there.
I mean, you don't have to. No one says you have to do any of this. But what's the challenge is you're fighting your brain's addiction to dopamine. So knowledge is half the battle. Yeah. And what we're here to do is give you that knowledge to where you can shift from burned out to balanced. And finding balance. You're not going to find balance and more complexity and doing more. And
simplification is the key, and really tuning into what is the most important to you. What are those core values of yours? Have you ever stopped to think about what your core values are?
Yeah.
And they will evolve and change over time, and that's completely fine. But checking in with those again, like, like you said, I assumed I had to have that 6-figure, job with the fancy title, and that was what was going to make me happy and make me feel good enough, and all of that. And but I never took the time to figure out if that's what really mattered to me. And the fact was, it didn't.
It didn't.
And it might matter to others, and that might be what's driving you, and that's great if that is. But also take the time to check in with yourself, and then give something else up if that's what you're going to go all in on, right? Like,
or maybe it's just something simple. I mean,
yeah. And don't ignore your health while you're doing it. So
right. I mean, if you feel like you need to be in the know and you need to have news, well, okay, great. Can you curate how that's delivered to you, and maybe not have all the opinionated negative diatribe also poured down in your throat at the same time? Because here's the thing, we're a product of our inputs. Yeah. So managing that, because you can, it's an option, managing that is incredibly important.
Yeah.
There's a lot of very simple tools, and we talked about the power of the pause. We talked about, being aware of your inputs. We talked about, taking, maybe time, or whatever that looks like. We didn't talk about sleep.
No, yeah, sleep's important.
I mean, here's the thing. Wait. Eat, breathe, sleep.
Yeah.
It's a foundational thing.
Yeah, the foundational things, but yet we all think we can go with less sleep. Or one of the things I hate the most is, I'll sleep when I die. Well, no, you're not sleeping, you're dead. No, or I don't need sleep. And I guess, part of it too is coming from the accounting background. That was very much a lot of people's mantra is, I don't need the sleep. And there was like a badge of honor if you stayed up and worked through till 2 a.m. Oh, well, I worked till 2 a.m. Well, congratulations, I was sleeping.
This is beautiful, shiny badge right here. Like, overachievers. See, look at me. I'm really important. I'm awesome. See, I'm an overachiever. I worked all these hours and I feel miserable, and I'm overweight and I'm unhealthy and I can't think very well because I didn't get enough sleep so I can refresh my brain. But I've got this badge. See, I'm overachiever. It's incredibly insane.
It really is. We've got it backwards, right? Like, I like to separate rest and sleep because, like I said, rest is, turning off your brain and doing something that, gives you energy and recharges you. Sleep also recharges you, but sleep is like actual deep sleep. Are you getting enough of it?
Are you alive?
It keeps you alive. Your brain needs it to process your day. It needs it to, help keep you healthy, your immune system and all of that. So we can't just keep thinking we can do more by sleeping less. It's a falsity, and it will catch up to you. And it does increase your risks of other health issues like mental, physical, all, high blood pressure, which can lead to heart attacks and, like you said, high cholesterol levels and diabetes and all of that. So it really, truly is something like you think, well, when we were kids, we knew how to sleep, but as adults, we're like,
and for some reason, as adults, we have this badge of honor if we sleep less, like we're more I don't know, more adulting.
Yeah, I mean,
it is such adulting.
It is a falsity, but I mean, anywhere between 6 and 9 hours, depending on the individual. Some people can go with a little bit less, but you got to play with it to figure out what is working for you. Like, for some people, 9 might be too much. They're waking up still groggy. Maybe you're getting too much sleep, but if you're waking up and you feel like you're unrested, you're probably not getting enough. So it's like,
and play with it. The best way to do it is allow your body's natural rhythms to kick in. I wake up when the sun wakes up. That's just when I wake up. And it really doesn't matter if I've had enough sleep. So I need to make sure that I'm at the bed plenty early to get 7.5 hours, because that's my sweet spot.
Yeah.
So I wake up when that sun rises, and
that's it. Yeah.
That's it. I'm up.
Yeah.
Whether I'm like, because I stayed up too late looking at cat videos, which I don't do, by the way, but that's a theory. It has happened. The only time I have actually done that is I like big-footed horses, like Clydesdales. I kind of have a big weakness for big-footed horses, so I will stay up too late watching big-footed horse videos.
Yeah. I think we can all get caught up in different things, and it's really important to have that sleep routine, right? To have that downtime before you go to bed to tell your body that you're actually getting ready to sleep, not just turning your phone off and hitting the bed. That's not going to help you. So having that half an hour or so beforehand to really start sending the signal to your brain, it's time to relax, it's time to sleep, it's time to shut off, it's time to
Or
recharge.
watching the exciting action video right before the
Yeah,
screen.
still be there tomorrow if you really want to see it, you know.
It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully these tactics, sleep is really important one, so I didn't want to miss that one. But hopefully these tactics will help you. And if for some reason you have questions, you're like, okay, well, I'm not still really sure whether I'm flirting with burnout or if it's just stress. I'm having some specifics. You reach out to either one of us. Of course, Michelle's available on LinkedIn. Of course, she's got a presence on Instagram as well. If you are on Instagram, she's got some great free information there. Michelle, you had a free test or?
Yeah, I got a free burnout quiz on my Instagram bio. And if you can't find it, just, DM me on LinkedIn as well. Happy to send you the link. It'll give you an idea if you're in burnout or if you're approaching burnout, and it just, kind of help you gauge where you're at. And yeah, happy to send that to you and answer any questions you might have. We're definitely here to help, right? Like the more we talk about it, the more we can all recover.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, it's important to keep in mind that this too shall pass, and knowing the tools to help you address your specific situation is so incredibly important. So I'm really happy to have you on the show, Michelle. It's been
thank you.
Great pleasure. And it's been a lot of fun talking about this and sharing that knowledge. Is so important, I think, now more than ever. Not that it wasn't important before. We just didn't pay as much attention to it. And
That's right.
We kind of have to, because we've been through almost 3 years of burnout inducing things. And a lot of us are in close to that state. We're experiencing that massive exhaustion. So being able to have to tackle that intentionally is fantastic. So thank you again. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah. Like for those of you tuning in either now or later, please don't be shy. If you have questions, reach out to either one of us directly or just put a comment on the show notes. We'll be happy to help you. And most importantly, shift from burned out to balanced. So until next time, my friends, keep elevating. Bye for now.